Welcome back to Blastertoad's Game Academy, Class 101. Today we get to talk about the various serious matter of naming schemes, standards, and best practices. So something that I've run into with a few people that I've helped out, and a few videos I've watched for tutorials, is that people like to put all their stuff in one place. And it doesn't do you well to do that. So we're going to talk about what sort of objects to use and when, and we're also going to talk about a naming scheme to easily find things. Okay, so under blueprints here, I'm going to create a couple more folders. So I am going to create a new folder for core items, things that are going to be throughout the game. I'm going to do a new folder for pawns, and I'm going to explain what they are in just a moment. And I'm going to create a new folder for shared, and a new folder for, let's call it items. And let's do one more folder, just for good measure. One more folder. We are going to call this one props. Okay. Props I might actually have under a world folder, but we'll change that later. Okay, so under blueprints, I'm going to grab my game mode. I'm going to drop that in the core. We're going to move there, and we're going to open up core. So in our core folder, we want a few things. So we want a game mode, and this kind of controls how, well, doesn't kind of control, it should control and should have the information on how a game's to be played, how a game is to be scored. Okay, anything core gameplay there, or, sorry, not core gameplay, but scoring, anything that's important to the game that should not be directly affected by the player. Okay, so updating score, dealing with spawning, things like that. Although the player may score, they are not actually the one updating the score. The game mode is. We are also going to get from blueprint class. So again, right-clicking. So we're just going to right-click blueprint class. And now this time we're under all classes here. We're going to hit that little arrow. We're going to do a game instance. I'm going to call that GI underscore project 101 because I'm only going to have one of these for the project. The game instance is the first thing to load for your game. This is always running in the background. Okay? Unlike the game mode or levels that get loaded and unloaded and the information in them is lost every time they're unloaded, the game instance is always there. It's always in the background and it's the first thing to load. So if there's something we want to have take effect across the whole game, so if we want to do the sound level, okay? So how loud our game is or how loud our music is. Or if we're doing a mobile game and want to let people switch between a touchscreen input and a tilting the device input, we may want to store that in the game instance. So when a level is loaded, it can always say, hey, what sound level am I supposed to be at? What sort of controls are we using for this level? And those will always be available there in the game instance. Okay. Another thing we're going to need, and in our example here, we're only going to have one. We're going to do a blueprint class and a player controller, and I'm going to call this PC underscore project 101. Okay, I like to do these very quick little initials or describers on everything. So say I have multiple game modes. I'll have a deathmatch, a capture the flag, a racing game mode, whatever. Then I can quickly find them all by hitting my search and typing in GM for game mode. The other thing is when I'm doing a quick click through to find something, I know exactly what it is. Okay? You may be thinking, well, Toad, why would you need the naming thing when you can see the icons? Well, they aren't always that clear cut. So let's, for example, go into blueprint class, and we are going to get a save game. So we're going to type in there save, grab a save game. I'm going to call this save underscore local. And that looks really darn close to what our game instance is, doesn't it? Okay, so it's not always the easiest thing to see. Like even pawn, so I'll just do this as pawn underscore blank. It's separate here, but they are both a knobby thing with a ball on top. Okay, I'm just going to delete that pawn for now. So we want to use those nice little descriptors. Okay, now I mentioned I'd go over what pawns are, so let's take a look at, so if we right click again and hit blueprint classes. So an actor is anything that goes out in the world. Okay, so a lamp that we're going to make in a later video, that is going to be an actor. A car is an actor. A player character is an actor. They are all things that end up in the world. Okay? A pawn is anything that can be controlled. So the car and the player character are going to be pawns. The lamp, the character is never going to possess the body of a lamp, at least not in our game. So that is just going to be a standard actor. It does not need to be a pawn. Okay? And with the pawn comes some interaction things pre-built in, so that's all there. And then character is a upgraded version of the pawn with some more pre-built things from Unreal Engine, going into some pre-built stuff for multiplayer and for movement, which we'll be going over in another video here fairly shortly. So actors, pawns, and characters, those are the differences in them. Okay. So now that we have our core set up here, we have a game instance, game mode, and player controller. Let's set up some pawns. We're going to go to pawns, going to right click, going to do a blueprint class, and we're going to do a character. And I'm going to call this character underscore player. Okay, so again, I know exactly what it is with that name, character. Now, let's do something a little different. So we're going to right click blueprint class, going to make a pawn, and instead of calling this pawn something, I'm going to call this class underscore vehicle. Now that doesn't quite jive with what we've been doing, so what's going on here? So if we right click again, see this blueprint class, and then we click it and we've got all these things. So all of these are a type of blueprint. Okay, so the same here, whereas I've got, this is a type of character. Well, this isn't just a type of pawn. We aren't doing a single pawn. This is going to be a type called vehicles. So then if I right click and create a child, I would call this one vehicle underscore car 01. Sure, let's do that. And then I could have truck 01 and truck 1 through 10 or whatever. And all of these child units are going to get whatever we put in the core, in the class. Okay, so when we call something class, it is going to have children it inherits things to. It is going to give the children part of its DNA, so to speak. Anything we code on here will be available to its children. So that's why we're going to have class, and then the child units we are going to call the name of class. Okay, hope you all got that there. And then the shared stuff, we're going to work with some interactable things in another couple videos, and we're going to start filling these out later. Okay, so that's it for now. Those are the naming standards we're going to use. Now let's talk about where and when to put things. So we briefly touched on the game instance. So this is always loaded in the background of your game. Okay, so the game instance always being loaded in the background, that's where we want persistent things. The game mode is going to be loaded in and out with your level, and this is where we should keep anything for spawning characters in the level, where we should keep code for keeping track of score, and how things should work in the world as an overall. The player controller, this is the brain of our character, okay? So their brain or their essence. Whatever is core to the player. So say we are making a survival game. Their health, hunger, stamina statistics, that would be core to the player. It's always going to be with them. So we'd want to put that on the player's controller, quite possibly. Then the pawns, or things that we can control, well, these are now, instead of being the player's brain or essence, these are the player's body. And the bodies are going to act very differently whether they are a humanoid body or whether they are currently playing as a car. Okay, so either way, we want their health to always be taken into consideration. We always want their hunger stats and whatnots to be ticking down. But they're going to move differently depending on which body they're currently in. So anything to deal with movement or how something takes damage, we may want to put that on the pawn or the body. So that is how we're going to think of this hierarchy of where we should put things. Is it always needed in the game? Well, then it might go in the game instance, because then it's always there, we don't have to reload it. Is it just this game mode that's going to do something, or am I spawning things, or are we telling things how score should be kept? Well, let's put that in the game mode. And then player controller is, again, the core of the player, anything that always stays with them. And then the body of the player is going to deal with how that body takes damage, how that body moves are going to be on the pawns. We're going to get to some other things later when we start dealing with multiplayer, but that is quite a few videos down the road, so we will add those items at that time, and I will go over their usages at that point. Otherwise, we're just going to get too much here. So these are the naming schemes we're going to use. So we're going to be calling things after what type of class they are, or we're going to be declaring our own class, and then calling things after what class they are. And now we know where to keep our different types of code. Okay, again, spawning always in game for the character or for the character's body. We'll see you next time when we actually start to look at doing some blueprinting, making some magic happen, and getting characters moving around on the screen. Until then, I hope all is going well for you and you're enjoying the videos. I know these first two have been a little bit dry, but they are basics we have to get through. So in the next video here, we are going to go over movement, getting different types of characters moving around the screen. So I'll see you then. Bye for now.